Pat Mayo Hour.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour UFC London DraftKings picks and preview. Cody Saftic in the studio with me, ready to finally get back on track, I have to feel like.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Finally, the curse has been slightly broken. That my main event picks, I mean, if we're looking back at the fact that Holly Holm didn't get the job done, we're looking back even before that, Derek Lewis. How could you do this to me, Travis Brown? The guy's holding his gut the whole time, and once again blown. And even Stephen Thompson, whether you thought he should have got the decision or not, did not. It would have taken a moron to get the Kelvin Gastelum pick wrong. So now that we've proven I'm not a moron, let's make it 2 for 2 here.
All right, and it's not just going to be the two of us today for like the first time. I think it's the first time we've had a guest on the DraftKings MMA Pat Mayo Hour, but joining us via the telephone, Kyle Marley at Big Marley 3 on Twitter. What's going on, man?
Not a lot. Thanks for having me on. I feel special that I'm the first guest.
Yeah,
ready to make some money this weekend.
Yeah, well, let's try to make some money. And you got to give Cody the heat that I can't bring because I don't know. So when Cody says something stupid, you got to jump all over him, all right?
That's why he's bringing you in. He's just like, you know what? I'm bringing the first ever Tout Master to take on Cody, who's seemingly not finding his groove so far this season. But don't worry, we're going to turn that around right here.
Well, this is an interesting card. Kyle won the first ever Tout Master pick'em pool for the year of MMA, and this you mentioned to me the fighters on this card are the ones that qualified you for the DK Live final last year, right?
Yeah, there's 5 of them on this card, and I think I'm going to use all 5 again in a lineup this weekend. So, yeah, they got me in to see UFC 205 in New York City. Hoping I can get some good luck again.
All right, well, let's start with the cash game team. That is Cody, so feel free to interject whenever you'd like. Kyle, you have Brett Johns at $9,300 as your highest priced player. Cody, why?
Well, Brett Johns is not typically even really a potent finisher. I mean, judo black belt, a guy that has a great ground game, tenacious, going to keep on you at all times, try to break you down. It's more so the fact that Ian Entwistle, I'm not going to go outright and call this guy a quitter, but he tends to break rather quickly. As soon as he goes for the heel hook, he'll try to maneuver from a heel hook, straight Achilles, maybe try to grab the knee bar. As soon as his leg lock submissions do not work, he tends to just completely fade out. We've seen him in performances against Alejandro Perez, Anthony Burchak. Same thing for the most part. If he catches you like the Burchak fight, you're done. If he doesn't catch you and he ends up like the Dan Hooker fight, you're going to smash him. I think the same thing happens with Brett Johns, $9,300. Moving down, we got Tom Breeze, $9,000. Tom Breeze, the British fighter, does spend most of his time at TriStar. He comes from a boxing background, purple belt in BJJ. They call him the Octopus. He's very long. He's very big. He's had a run of performances that not the most spectacular performances, and for that reason, I think a lot of people have kind of moved away from Tom Breeze. But when I look at a fight like this against Oluwale Bangbase is a hot starter. He needs to get in there. He needs to implement his game quick. Tom Breeze is tough to put away, and if you don't put Tom Breeze put him away quick, you're going to allow him to fight his way back into this. As I mentioned, I think he's a little sharper standing, especially with his boxing skills, but he's much better on the ground. He's much smarter, has a better game plan. I think he's going to take it to the ground and get a job.
So, okay, the next guy you have is at $8,900, so you're going with a big 3 at the top. Tell me about Mark with a C. I don't like that. I'll tell you right off the top, I don't like that.
Pat Mayo does not like Mark with a C, but Mark Diakese, this guy is just a big power puncher. I mean, I've always said that he reminds me in many ways like a Paul Daly. He does not fight exactly like a Paul Daly, and he's ways away from being like that, but he's got raw explosive power. He gets in the pocket, he'll land it. He's not afraid to as I mentioned, go toe-to-toe with guys, but he's still young in his career, and he's still developing, and we can see him go out there and get a first-round knockout, or we can see in his last performance, a guy like Frankie Perez, that you can test this guy, you can find holes in him. But it was that last fight exactly against Perez, is that it was possibly 1-1 going into the third round. He's got to come up with something, and he does. He's got a decent takedown game. He's got a pretty solid kickboxing game all around. And once again, I look at Teemu Packalén. Teemu Packalén is pretty much just a striker. Yes.
Is he Finnish?
He is a Finnish fighter, and he 1-1 in the UFC. His last time out, he looked fantastic against Thibaut Goudy. But the problem with the Thibaut Goudy fight is that was over a year ago. So he's looking good, sure, but now he's taken that year off. In that year, we don't know how much he's improved, but he's a ground specialist. I believe also a BJJ purple belt, although it's very possible that he recently just got his brown belt in BJJ. He's a world champion on the European level and not at the black belt level, so he is good on the ground. I just don't know that he'll be able to go in there and get Diakese down, who's very strong. And even if he does, we saw that Diakese can survive against a guy like Perez, who's probably equally, if not better, on the ground than Teemu Packalén. So $8,900, I think he stuffs the takedowns, makes this a dirty fight, and in rounds 2 or 3, he lands that power and knocks him out.
All right, so strategy-wise, Kyle, when you're building your DK lineup this week, do you think it's smart to go with 3 expensive guys, and then if you're feeling good about the mid-range or even lower-price guys, simply for cash? Is that the way to go, or do you see this differently?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to figure that out myself. I'm actually looking forward to seeing where he's going with these other 3 fighters, since he is going heavy at the top. I think I'm going with the more balanced approach this week, and I'm staying more in the middle. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing these 3 underdogs he's going to take to make this cash team work out.
Well, where are you starting with your lineup, do you think, at least for cash?
I would say I'm not sure if you want to stack the main event. I always think that's acceptable. The Corey Anderson-Emmanuel fight, that's definitely stackable in cash. But I don't think I'm going to do it this week. Right now, I have Mark Diakisi as well. He's my top fighter at the 8,900. I love this kid as a prospect. He's good everywhere. I think it could be a first-round finish, or it could be a unanimous decision win for him. But I'm going to have him in a lot of my teams. But that's where I'm starting off on my cash team.
All right, so Cody, the next fighter you have, we dropped down to $7,900, and you're going with Arnold Allen.
Yeah.
Why ignore everyone else in the $8,000 range?
Well, first and foremost, as we more or less just discussed, I've put on 3 heavy players at the top, $9,300, $9,000, and $8,900. So I have to be careful, and I can't go out there and spend, even if I think $8,100 is a good value, what am I going to end up with I spend that? So I know I have to take sub $8,000, to be perfectly honest, and we are working our way down. But I did take Lucy Pudilova, who's taking on Lena Landsberg. That's obviously a fight that most people are going to avoid. I think it makes a lot of sense on a cash game.
You have it on your GPP team, too.
I went on my GPP team the same reason, is that on a cash game team, I think it's safe because she's going to go the 3 rounds. I say that because she's already fought Lena Landsberg, and the fight did go 3 rounds. If you look at the last time they performed, and this is the thing with Lucy, she's coming in on a short notice, which is going to be a disadvantage. She's making her UFC debut, that's going to be a disadvantage. And you're taking on a girl who's actually headlined a card the last time out. So even though Landsberg lost to Cyborg, the experience that she's going to pull from that is going to be huge. So people are right away, they're writing off this girl, and they're saying, well, you know what, she comes from an unknown gym for the most part. She really hasn't made waves. She's taking a fight on short notice, and she's fighting a girl that she's already fought and she's lost to. But just rewatch that fight. What it becomes evident is that Lena Landsberg is the former Muay Thai champion. She should be able to have the striking advantage, but she spends a lot of the time just clinching up with the smaller fighter, putting her up against the cage, and just trying to work her there. The longer this fight goes, that we see that 35-year-old Lena Landsberg, his gas take's not spectacular. The longer the fight goes, you can open up, you can find openings on her. Lucy just does exactly that. The first round's not the greatest first round. The second round's not the greatest second round. But you see in the third round that she's got a fantastic gas tank. She's a willing combatant. She gets in there. She's pushing the pace. She's getting in her face. Since losing that fight to Landsberg, she's gone on a 2-fight winning streak. She's kind of righted the ship. And as I mentioned, she's only 27 years old, Pat. So she's going to make improvements. You're going to give me this girl for $7,100. Why I like her on a cash game team is I think even in defeat, she'll go the 3 rounds, just like she did the last time. I expect improvements out of her. I don't know how many improvements I expect out of Landsberg. So I think on a cash game team, she's going to be able to get me that basement that I'm looking for. If I go on a GPP team, there is the offhand chance that I don't really don't think she gets the finish. But there is the offhand chance that you got Landsberg that's coming off a finish in her last performance against Cyborg, comes into this fight against a girl that she's already beaten. So it's possible that you're overlooking her. And you haven't spent the whole camp ready for this specific opponent. Lucy goes out there and she uses that work ethic. She uses that speed advantage. She uses that just to get in there and just outwork her. I don't think it's crazy that she gets a close decision. It should be a close fight. Win or lose, it'll be a close fight. But I don't think it's crazy that she can outwork her. $7,100. I mean, that's the real key to the game here. I would have saved a little bit of her on the GPP and mostly just played her on a cash game team. But upon putting my team together, and my cash game team and GPP are very similar, I felt that was the best move for me this week.
So, Kyle, you didn't start your team with anyone in the $9,000 range, and that's where Landsberg falls. She comes in at $9,100. Is that because you're feeling kind of the same way, or you just think this is going to be a closer fight, and if it's going to be a close fight with decision, $9,100 is just too much money?
I don't really know a whole lot about this fight, but they have fought before. Landsberg won a decision. I can see that happening again. This fight is most likely to go to decision of all the fights on the card. So taking the punt with Pudilova is a good idea since he's going to rack up those points within the 15 minutes that the fight takes place. But, yeah, I just don't know enough about that fight, so I'm pretty much staying away from it in general.
All right, so at the outset, you talked about stacking in cash game, which is using 2 fighters from the same fight. Do you find that has a lot of merit in cash games?
Yeah, I do it quite often, actually. I like it. I know that everyone hates it because you're guaranteeing yourself a loss, but on the other hand, you're guaranteeing yourself a win. And if you can guarantee 1 win, you're already doing better than people who are putting 6 different fights in there. I just think if you can get 4 wins in a cash team, you're likely to win. So that's always my goal. If I can get 4 wins, then I'm sitting pretty.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Most people usually do it with them, like, not necessarily, I guess the main event makes sense because you get the extra rounds, but I've seen people even do it where it's a way to afford the most expensive player, and then you save yourself the salary cap relief by taking the crummiest person on the board. Is that a way to go most weeks?
Yeah, those are the two ways that I would go. It's either the main event or any 5-round fight, or the top fighter and the bottom fighter, which I've also messed around with this week. I'm not ruling that out of my cash team, but Duffy and what's his name?
Reza Madadi.
Madadi, yeah. I could definitely see that being a good stack this week, just so you can get Duffy in your lineup. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do yet.
Well, who is it that you like in this mid $8,000 range that's probably going to appear on your cash team?
I got a few of them. So I like Vera over Pickett. He's a dog. Small dog, but if I use Marlon Vera, and Leon Edwards as my two dogs, those are both pretty slight underdogs. They are both currently sitting at plus 120 on the betting line. So that's what I'm doing. I'm using those two close dogs in my cash team as of now. And then I'm going up to the Diakese, as I mentioned earlier. And then I'm filling it out with just three other mid-range guys that I think have a better chance of winning. So I'm mostly just playing it safe, getting the close to even value dogs, and then just 4 other favorites.
You made the face, Cody. Leon Edwards, why not?
No, just Leon Edwards is someone who, coming over from England, he's super loyal to his camp, and then he had spent a little bit of time in like the Black Stallions camp, whereas Vicente Luque was a block-time Black Stallion. And then a friend of mine, he's like a backup kickboxing coach there. He was helping Henry Hoof prior to Henry Hoof splitting and opening up his own gym. And he was saying that like Vicente Luque and his management team had been specifically asking for Leon Edwards. So that was the reason like I'm not taking Edwards. He's a talented guy.
But you're not taking either side of that fight.
No, it's a close fight. I mean, it's a really close fight. That's what I'm saying. On a cash game team, it actually makes sense because you would think it's probably going to go the distance. But in Luque's case, I mean, probably people thought he'd go the distance with guys like Muhammad as well as last time out. But I mean, if he puts those hands on you, he's a fast starter, you know? Like, he can knock you out, but at the same time, you can find into a rhythm with him. He's young and he's getting better every time out, but the same thing could be said about Leon Edwards, who will probably try to grapple him. So it's a close fight. It's just that's one of those fights that I'm not 100% sure on either side of the coin, so I mostly avoided it. That's all.
So, Kyle, you mentioned that like he's a slight dog, but reflecting the DraftKings pricing, you're getting a pretty supreme value on Leon Edwards. How much of your process is determined by that? By looking at the odds, finding, hey, this guy's a slight dog, yet on DraftKings he seems like a massive dog, so let's just take him and hope it works out.
It's a good place to start, I think, for every card. I'm not sure if it was the last card or the card before it when Yuri Alcantara fought Luke Sanders. Luke Sanders was a pretty big underdog on DraftKings, but he was actually the favorite on the betting line. So even though I was picking Alcantara to win that fight, I immediately started my lineups with Luke Sanders just for that betting value. But yeah, on this card, there's not a whole lot of it. Really, I think Edwards has the most value on this card, DraftKings-wise.
Is there any other like gambling props that you can look at, like whether it's like knockout props, decision props, anything like that, that can influence how you end up making your picks?
I like to look at the over-unders. Any 1.5 round over-under, those are always good for GPP fights. And I think there's 7 of them on this card, so you could even focus on those 7 fights and just go either way on them. Hopefully you can get 6 finishes and win a GPP.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, when you won that card to qualify for UFC 205, I feel like, Cody, you had a really good lineup that week, too. And that was
206 was the Toronto card. That was the
the big one, the last big one. And how did that work out for you? Did you have like 5 quick finishes and another guy who won? Like, what did that team look like?
Mine, well, that's actually what I'm giving away right now is 5 of them. So my team, I'm pretty sure it was, I had Yuri Alcantara who beat Pickett. So again, I'm betting against Pickett on this one, and I'm taking Vera in my lineup. And then the other one, I took Struve over Omelianchuk. And now I'm going to pick against that guy again. I'm going to pick Timothy Johnson to beat him. So I need both those guys to lose again for me. And then the winners I had were Jimmy Manua, Mark Diakese, and Leon Edwards. So I'm just throwing those 3 in there. And then I'm going to plug one more guy in, and I'm going to put Scott Askham as my 6th person. He's the favorite on the card. I think I can get 6 wins there. So I like this in cash and GPPs.
Cody, tell me about Arnold Allen, because he's on the team at 7,900.
Yeah, the Golden Boy, Arden Allen, another British fighter, and this is someone who I had watched a lot coming up on the British regional. He had spent some time with Cage Warriors, and just good-looking, young, talented kid. Seems like sky will be the limit for him. Not training in the best training environment, but he's young, he's getting better. He's another one of those fighters like Tom Breeze that left Europe, came to TriStar and trained at Montreal's famed TriStar training facility. Since then, young, getting a little bit better. His first fight against Alan Omer, I do like Alan Omer. He gets the win. Not the most spectacular fight in the world, but a good little performance for him. Important to note that Omer has since been released. His last performance against Yautza Meza, not the greatest performance, but I just showed that Yautza Meza is a guy that's a veteran. He's been around for a long time, obviously training partner with Benson Henderson. The guy's got some experience under his belt. So for the young kid like Arnold Allen to go in, get the win, it showed that he's developing. Now he's taken a long time off since the Yautza Meza fight. So I'm just really banking on the fact that he's made the improvements in the gym. He's getting older, he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger, he's getting more competent, and he's more confident in his own skills. Flip side to that, I look like Amir Khani. Makwan Amir Khan, I mean, this is a guy that everyone loves to... You'd love to love the guy, really. I mean, he's funny. He seems to be pretty talented, good-looking guy. He's got all these ads, him eating this apple, and it's got 100,000 views. Like funny ads of him. He's a Finnish fighter, and the beautiful blonde ladies all around him. He's easy to get behind this guy. The thing is I'm not particularly sold on him. He's got a big mouth. He's got a decent skill set, but he's 3 wins in the UFC. All 3 of those fighters have since been released. And hey, the 2 wins that Arnold Allen has had, well, they're both released as well. So don't get me wrong. The 5 combined wins these guys got in the UFC over 5 guys that are no longer with the UFC.
Is this a loser leaves town match?
No, because they're both undefeated in the UFC. I'm not like they're losing. And just like typically if you lose, they're trying to build these guys up because they realize in both of them, maybe we have something here. But now you got Amir Khani, who hasn't fought in almost a long time since he fought Mike Wilkinson. And that's, you're going on close to a year now. You look at Arnold Allen, it's the same thing. They're young, they're talented, they're building their way up. But at what point do they have to take that real stiff test? And hey, we're going to stick them in the same ring together, and we're going to put them in the same scenario. Makwan Amir Khani comes from that wrestling background. I expect that's what he's going to try to get here. This is a guy, I found it odd. He talks about, I want to be the next Conor McGregor. I want to fight Conor McGregor. Then leaves and goes to SBG Ireland to train with Conor McGregor. I don't know what his deal is. As I said, he's a comedic guy. I like him. But I feel like if his wrestling does not work, he doesn't really have much of a plan B. In his last couple of fights, the wrestling's worked. But in that last fight against Wilkinson, it's the first time you see. If he doesn't submit the guy in the first round, he has to go 3. Is he the most impressive guy out there? No, he's not. Can Arnold Allen stop those takedowns, box him up, and beat up that pretty face of his? Yeah, I certainly think he can. $7,900 on a cash game team. Once again, I think if Arnold Allen's going to lose, he'll get taken down, he'll get held down, but he'll still score some points. I don't necessarily see this guy getting dusted, so I'm willing to take the shot on my cash.
Kyle, where are you going in the main event? Which side? Got to pick one.
Taking Jimmy Manuwa, told you.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. Jimmy Manuwa. I do like this fight a lot, though, in GPPs. You can go either way. Same with cash. If you are on Anderson, I think you should use him in cash.
Well, you are using Anderson on your cash team, Cody. That fills out the rest of your team.
But go and check who I have on my GPP.
You have Manuwa.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Listen, if Jimmy Manuwa was going to win this fight, in all likelihood, he probably knocks Corey Anderson out completely in 1 or 2 rounds. The guy's got the power, he's got the competency, he's been in this situation before, he's headlined cards in England, and those cards didn't go his way. He's picked up a lot since then. If Corey Anderson is going to win this fight, he's going to look for takedown after takedown, he's going to ride out position, he's going to try to grind him. I think with the fact that it's 5 rounds, if Corey Anderson goes out there and does what Corey Anderson can do, he will get the takedowns. He will control him, he will grind on him, and this might go into a 4 and 5. He has the better gas tank. He can ride out Manuwa. On a cash game team, if he comes through, he's going to come through big. On a GPP team, it's the exact opposite. I'm willing to take that risk on Jimmy Manuwa. Jimmy Manuwa goes out there and he lands his hands. He's going to knock out Anderson. You look at Anderson, the guy's been knocked out by Jean Vellante. And not just knocked out, like one of those, he got knocked into a different fucking universe knocked out. You look at fights against Shogun Rua or Tom Lawler. He's getting rocked in those. Jimmy Manuwa is by far a bigger power puncher, so there's a lot of danger here.
Wasn't Jimmy Vellante the guy that you...
Jimmy Manuwa. Jean Vellante.
Okay, Jean Vellante. I always thought Jean Vellante was a poker player. But anyway, that's in my mind now. Wasn't he like the guy that we said we're picking on last week? Just take the guy fighting him?
Yeah, we took Shogun, who's an old-ass guy with no ACLs, and he blasted him, right? Because Jean Vellante fights a crazy style. Now, in the fight against Corey Anderson, what I love about Corey Anderson is that the kid is very young. He comes from a good wrestling background, All-American, gets into MMA because he talks to Ben Askren, one of the great wrestler turned MMA fighters, who tells him, listen, kid, you got a future in this. Start developing your striking. His footwork's improved leaps and bounds. His head movement, he moves his head. Thing is that he does get caught, and when he gets caught, it seems to do an astronomical lot of damage. 79-inch reach on him. He likes to use that jab, and that jab's vicious. Problem is, Jimmy Manuwa's also got a 79-inch reach, so if he gets in the habit of, I'm just going to stick my jab out, Manuwa doesn't really throw straight punches. He throws hooks. He's going to come over the top of that jab with a right hook, or a left hook for that matter, and he's going to just absolutely clobber him. So he needs to get to his wrestling. But to make this quick for you, in the last 3 years, Jimmy Manuwa's had 4 fights. That's it, in the last 3 years. In the same time frame, Corey Anderson has fought 8 times. In that same time frame, you've got Jimmy Manuwa's got 9 rounds under his belt to Corey Anderson's 21 rounds under his belt. Corey Anderson is 27 years old. Jimmy Manuwa's 37 years old. I just got to very much think that the young kid goes in there with a better game plan, uses the takedown. Jimmy Manuwa might ice this guy in 45 seconds. It's extremely possible. But I do see people online saying they're putting 5 units on Jimmy Manuwa, and I think that's a very, very bold move.
Do you have any best bets for this fight, Kyle, that have really stuck out to you so far?
I think I've made 3 bets so far, and Cody was talking about one earlier. I like Arnold Allen as well. I got him at plus 110. I think he's even right now, which I like as well. I thought he was going to be a slight favorite. The second bet I made was Marlon Vera over Brad Pickett. I got him at plus 150. He's moved to plus 120, which I still like a little bit. I just thought plus 150 was a little wide, so I had to take a little bit on that. And then another one that I really like is a parlay with who we mentioned earlier, Brett Johns. I like him. Parlayed with Mark Diakisi and Joe Duffy. You can get those 3 at plus 101 right now, and I would put the house on it.
You in?
Yeah, honestly, I'm in. Just if I'm going to play the one devil's advocate is that you're going against Reza Madadi, who's a known purse stealer. The guy did some jail time for stealing purses. Last thing I need is for him and stealing Joe Duffy's purse, also known as his win bonus, and screwing me. All jokes aside, you got a pro boxer here taking on a former Swedish national wrestling champion. Reza Madadi's older. He's slower. I do think Joe Duffy cuts him up. I don't like the line on it because the downside is if Reza Madadi goes out there and does what Dustin Poirier does to him, he's just going to hold him up against the cage, get a couple takedowns, get the nod. I like Joe Duffy. I do not like the line. That's why you got to parlay him up, really.
Yeah.
If you want some better some better money on this, you could take Duffy out and put Tom Breeze in, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I like that.
And that'll
I
give
do.
you plus 142. I like that as well.
And I'm feeling the Brett Johns Diakisi as well. I'm in on them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, they're both on my cash game team.
and
They're both on my GPP. I do like them, and I like them to hopefully get the finish anyway.
Kyle, can you kind of break down when the scoring switched over on DraftKings from the old scoring to the new scoring? Cody and I talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of get your insight on it too. What changed, and what type of fighters should we be targeting now?
What changed is wrestling is what you want to look for now. Usually, back in the day, I would hate when wrestlers are on cards. They would lay on someone for 15 minutes, and it's just not an exciting fight. Now, thanks to DraftKings, if someone gets laid on for 15 minutes, and I have that person, I'm loving it. I'm just enjoying all 15 minutes of it. But the other thing to me that changed big is I used to pretty much only target finishers, and now you're not really punished as much with a decision since you're getting all these takedown and advanced points. So I really just focus on winners now instead of finishers.
Just to chime in on that, and he's 100% right. Like, let's say you look at this main event as a classic example of that. Most people are going to think to themselves, I want Jimmy Manuwa, because Jimmy Manuwa was the power puncher, fighting a guy that's been known to get clipped before, and I'm looking for that first round or second round knockout. So you load up on Jimmy Manuwa. Flip side of that is you got Corey Anderson, as I mentioned, All-American. As I mentioned, this guy used to go out to Colorado and train at the Olympic Training Center for his wrestling. He's had fights in the UFC against guys like Justin Jones, Lazy Bones Jones, and even Jan Blachowicz, where he can go out and he can complete 7 takedowns in a 3-round fight. You give this guy now 5 rounds. He can go out there, and in a 5-round fight, if he's got Jimmy Manuwa who's completely exhausted, we've seen Jimmy Manuwa not exhausted twice, we've seen him tired twice. The only time in his entire career that he's gone 3 rounds. He's only been decision once in his entire career, Pat. Keep that in mind. And the other time when he fought Alexander Gustafsson takes him down effortlessly early in the first round. By the time Manuel explodes to get back up, he's cooked. He's gassed. If he's gassed and he's just a punching bag for 5 rounds, he's going to get taken down. The ground position changes. What Kyle's saying is where you used to have a guy like Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson is not a finisher. Most of his fights go decision. Yeah, he won his last fight against Sean O'Connell was a finish. But generally, this guy routinely goes 15 minutes. Well, now if he's going to go 25 minutes, factor in those takedowns, factor in the small ground and pound, factor in the positional changes on the ground, well, now Corey Anderson all of a sudden is a hell of a scorer. And that's something that he never was prior to the rules changes. So it does switch some things up.
All right, let's move to your GPP team now. And it's basically the same. And we've already talked about Manuel in place of Anderson. But you have Alain Jobin at $7,000. Why?
Well, okay, he's $7,000. Let's first and foremost get that off the table. But Alain Jobin, you can't overlook this guy. It's punches and bunches. I mean, yeah, listen, I'm guilty of it too. I've called the guy a pretty boy in the past. You know, Versace model, likes to go out there, do up his hair. People love the guy. Why they love the guy is he's a fighter's fighter, man. No quit in him. He always comes forward. But he's got good punch output. He's got good versatility in his strikes. So his last couple of fights, it's easy to write this guy off. Oh, wow, Alain Jobin. But he goes out there and he just outworks guys. He out-hustles them. His last fight against Mike Perry, people are saying, well, Perry's the power puncher and he's very competent standing. He's confident. He'll catch Jobin. Jobin's on and he's confident and he's motivated. He will just swarm you with strikes. Can you catch the guy? Yes, you can catch the guy. But therein lies the issue with Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar Nelson could catch you, absolutely. But he's going to have to catch you on the right moment. He's going to have to find that spot, take advantage of that spot because he's not a power puncher. He's a karate stylist. We've seen him drop Brendan Thatch, but for the most part, can you outstrike him? Absolutely. My one worry, if I'm a Gunnar Nelson fan, is that Gunnar Nelson's a big favorite in this spot. So if people are going to load up on him, they got to pay a decent amount on DK, but to the tune of a 3.5 to 1, 4 to 1 favorite on the straight betting line. I mean, they're almost like you're overlooking a guy like Alain Jobin in many spots. But I really look back to fights where, like a Zach Cummings or when he fought Rick Story. These guys are competent wrestlers. They can stuff the takedown. If you stuff the takedown on Gunnar Nelson, you can apply some pressure. You can apply some heat. And that is what's going to make this guy break down. Keep in mind, Gunnar Nelson's a guy that routinely speaks out against weight cutting. He's openly said that he's probably a 155-pounder, but I don't want to cut any weight, so I'm just going to walk around at 170. If he's that much more skilled than you, he will find a way to win. He will catch you. He will beat you. His last fight against Tumanov, career best. He looked fantastic. If that same version of him shows up here, anything can happen. But if a version of him shows up here that's undersized than Jobin, struggles to take Jobin down, and now has to worry about counter-punching 3 punches at a time with one singular shot, he could get outworked, he could get caught. I don't see him getting knocked out, but I have seen the guy get dropped before by Rick Story, so it's not crazy to think that Jobin could apply that pressure. Do I think Jobin wins straight up? No. Do I think that Jobin's got some decent value on him if you did want to take a poke on him? Yeah. But for $7,000, this is a GPP, Pat. I'm trying to take a team that other people are not going to take, and people are generally probably going to go Gunnar Nelson. So for $7,000, I'm going to take Alain Jobin.
Kyle, do you have any fades at the top, and how much does like ownership percentage factor into that? Like, who do you think the chalk guy is going to be this week?
I think the chalk will be Brett Johns. That's who I have listed as the highest owned. And then below him, I would say Tom Breeze. They're both big favorites. Fight's likely to end early, so I think both of those will be pretty highly owned. I don't think it's going to keep me too much away from them. But it definitely I definitely am going to get the opponents in a couple GPP lineups as well, because if they win, it's likely going to be in the first round. My big fade at the top, though, would be Lena Landsberg at 9,100. I just don't see how she gets 10 times value with that price. So, yeah, I'm pretty much going to stay away from Landsberg. But yeah, like I was saying earlier, on a GPP lineup, I would kind of lean either Entwistle or Bamboze, because if they win, it's likely going to be round 1. And if they win, all that chalk is going to lose. You're going to lap the field, and you're going to have a first-round finish with a cheap price guy.
Now, can you explain to a few people who might not kind of understand what you're getting at here? You're talking about how many lineups generally do you play in each of these events?
I play quite a bit of lineups, actually, but I would say 10 or so is about what I like to put out just to make my percentages easier. But, yeah, if Johns is 50% owned and Entwistle is 10% owned, and you are that 10%, if it's a 10-man lineup, and Johns loses and Entwistle wins on the first round, you basically beat 5 guys right there. So that's why ownership does come into play for me, especially in those fights where it could be a round one finish.
So if you're going to play 10 lineups, would you have like Johns on like 7 of them, Entwistle on 1 or 2?
I'd probably go all in on that fight in GPPs, and I would go 8-2 for Johns, maybe 7-3 Entwistle, because I do like Johns to win in the first round. Just pound them out probably after that leg lock fails, but it's worth having some Entwistle.
Well, this kind of cropped up this week. Someone shouted you out for helping them win $3,500 last week on DK, although it was not the lineup that you gave out. There were pieces of it, and there were pieces of fights that you talked about, and someone, put in what they thought too. I mean, that's the best way to do this. If you use the lineup that we give out on the show, you have to understand like 20 other people are going to use that lineup, and therefore you can't win if it does win. Like we won that one time, and I split first place with 23 people.
Yeah, but that's why it helps to have, obviously a guest on, but you have someone, and Kyle comes on, he can tell you his lineup, he can tell you his thought process, but you're going to end up covering more of the fights on the card. If you just broke down all 13 fights, and you said, this is how much fighter A is, this is how much fighter B is, this is the thought process, then you're allowing the audience to think for themselves, make their own decisions. Because we're just offering up one free team, a lot of people feel like, I have to take that team. No, it's like Kyle said, your best chance here is to go and take a bunch of guys. And look at fights like Alistair Overeem versus Mark Hunt. Yeah, we think Overeem's going to win, but is there a chance that Mark Hunt goes and completely knocks his head clean off? Yes, and for that reason...
Who won that fight?
Alistair Overeem, thankfully. But if Hunt wins, we know he's going to win by knockout, so it's worth taking. Even look at that last week. We had Shogun on cash games and GPP. But I did mention, if you're going to play multiple teams, take Jean Vellante and a team or two. Why? Because if this guy's going to win, he's going to catch Shogun. And if you watched that fight, which I'm sure you did not, Patrick, it was crazy, man. Someone was going to catch someone. Luckily, Shogun caught Vellante. But there's no shame in being like, oh, I'm playing different teams and I'm going against myself. As you saw from my cash game team, my GPP, I don't do this often. My cash game team has Corey Anderson. My GPP team has Jimmy Manuel. Somebody's got to lose. One of these teams is going to get killed. But the plus side is if I have multiple teams, some of them get killed. It's like a good parlay. You got parlays going. Sometimes they lose and another one gets juiced up as a result. You just got to find that fine balance.
Tell me briefly about Darren Stewart, since we didn't touch on that. He's $8,800.
Darren Stewart's last fight against Francis Barroso ended in the first round, but it ended up being ruled to a no contest. So I think the thought process is let's just put that fight back together. I'm not the biggest Darren Stewart guy. He's very young into his career. He's getting better. And this is the biggest issue. It's not even anything that Darren Stewart does well or doesn't do well. It's Francis Barroso. Francis Barroso is one of the most difficult guys to pick. Because if he's in a spot where you think he's going to lose, he'll come out something out of his ass. If you think he's got a shot at winning, no chance does he have a shot at winning. He's going to shit the bed. This is a spot where last week they were in Brazil. Did they bother to save him on that card? No. They're sending him to England to fight the local British fighter. That would be my indication that this guy's going to lose. However, when you get a clear indication that Barroso is going to lose, Barroso's in for a decent performance. So it's a tough one to gauge with this guy. He's going to have the size advantage. He's going to have the ground advantage. But judging by the last fight, I mean, it seems to be like a no touch, and 8,800's a lot on Stewart.
Kyle, at the bottom, when you're filling out your GPP rosters and you're taking some contrarian plays against some of the chalkier guys, who are guys from like let's just say sub $8,000 that you'll be using on GPPs that you think do have a chance of maybe a quick knockout?
The GPP only plays, I think, would be Bambose and Entwistle. I wouldn't even think about using those guys in cash, but like I said, if they win, it's first round and you're going to get 100 points out of them. So those would be the two risky but pays off if they win guys that I would go to. But I like to get guys that I think have a better chance of winning. So like I said earlier, Leon Edwards, I have him winning this fight. He's going to be in a lot of my lineups. So I would go with him just for that value because the betting line is close, but the DraftKings salaries are not very close. And then Arnold Allen, I like him a lot to win. He's a slight dog on DraftKings, but I could see him getting a win. I don't know about a knockout. I just think he's very well-rounded. Americani might tire out after trying to get a bunch of takedowns in the first round, and I could see Allen getting a hometown decision. So those would be my favorite sub-8,000 guys, Arnold Allen and Leon Edwards.
You didn't actually weigh in on the Marlon Vera fight, Cody. Who do you like?
Yeah, so this is Brad Pickett's official retirement fight. And as someone who's been following Pickett for a long time, it's always tough for me to see him in these spots where, is he going to lose his last fight, and as Kyle nailed it, his last fight against Alcantara, you could either say that was the best version of Alcantara you've ever seen, or you could say that was the worst version of Pickett you've ever seen. There's a reason why he's retiring at this time in his career. He's getting old. But you're going to give this guy, you're going to send him home. So first and foremost, he's getting a home game. Second of all, they gave him a very winnable fight in Enrique Briones. Briones gets hurt. You got Marlon Vera, coming in basically at the 11th hour, a week out, to replace him. So the line's somewhat close here. Pickett's kind of known as one punch. How many times is he? Yeah, he's got some nice knockouts in his career. Knocking out Canadian Yves Jambouin, he probably ranks amongst the top of them.
When was the last time he knocked anyone out?
Well, see, Thomas Almeida, he drops this young, undefeated, hot prospect a number of times. It's like, damn, this guy's got some good hands. But the problem is that his punch defense is not exactly all that tight, and you can catch him at some point. That happened to be a flying knee, absolutely devastated him. But you can, even like a Henan Barao, back a long time ago when he fought Barao, you can light him up with strikes and then just take his back and choke him out. You can submit the guy, you can knock him out. He's certainly getting older as he moves on at this point in his career. My issue with Marlon Vera, a lot of people like Marlon Vera, coming out of the Ultimate Fighter, training with Greg Jackson's team in New Mexico. A lot of guys are behind him. I've never quite realized why people are behind him, but hey, he's young, trains at a good camp, he's got a good gas tank, he's getting better. Is his fight 2 fights ago against Davey Grant? Now, I went big on Davey Grant here, and my thought process was here is that Davey Grant is bigger than him, stronger than him, he's got the better wrestling pedigree. So if you're going to give me this young kid who prides himself on his wrestling, but his wrestling's not all that good, what's he going to do when he ends up on his back? And to be honest, he gets points deducted in the Davey Grant fight, he completely shits the bed, it was an awful performance all around. Do I think that Brad Pickett is equally the same size as Davey Grant, more experienced, uses better wrestling credentials, gets this guy down and holds him down? There's a possibility there. There is a possibility. But as we're talking about Francis Mombroso, it's hard to bet on Brad Pickett because he's got to be on, and that's the real issue about fighting. You spend 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks training for one single night, and you got to be on. On that one single night, you got to be on. And Brad Pickett, you don't know if he's going to be on or not. If he's on, he can get a decision here. I'm hoping he's going to be on. It's his retirement fight. He's motivated. He's ready for the big moment. I'm hoping he's going to be able to get the decision, but I would not play him on GPP because I don't think he finishes. I wouldn't play him on a cash game team because, quite frankly, I mean, it's going to be a close fight regardless. But for the straight betting line, if more money keeps coming in Marlon Vera, Kyle nailed it. Plus 150, yeah, you're probably going to want to take Cheeto. Now he's at plus 120. If this ends up even or more money continues to roll in the guy, I would be very tempted to take a play on Brad Pickett. And if I was going to put Brad Pickett, I'd have to get that extra value and take Brad Pickett by decision. Cheeto, meanwhile, could win the decision, but with it being Brad Pickett, he could knock the fucker out. He could submit the guy. Anything could happen. So that's a tougher one to get extra value on. But if you like Cheeto, bet him straight up. If you like Pickett, take the decision.
Okay, before we get out of here, I've been doing this now, like 2.5 years we've been doing this show. I finally have a guy that I hate, that I'd never want to see again on a DraftKings team, on a betting line, anything.
Yeah, that's what happens the more you start watching MMA and betting on MMA.
I hope Tim Means gets cut.
Oh, yeah.
The guy fucked me last week. I had a 7-fight parlay on the go. He was one of the biggest favorites on it. Nope.
You want something funny, actually? So I won about $500 last weekend, and Tim Means would have prevented it from being $1,200. But son of a bitch, he fought the same guy, Cowboy Oliveira, at UFC 207. I was at that fight. I picked Cowboy to win that fight. 2 minutes happens. It's a no contest. And now coming in here, I went against my gut, Pat. I went against my gut. And I said, you know what? I was telling people that Cowboy Oliveira is too big, too strong. He'll probably just get him to the ground and control him. But Means looked good in that last fight prior to getting himself a no contest with those illegal knees. I'm going Means. As soon as he started dumping Means like a sack of potatoes, I was like, son of a bitch.
Kyle, before we get out of here, you won the first ever Toutmaster, right?
Correct.
How do you feel, and Cody, you can chime on this too, losing to me this year?
Don't listen to him, Kyle. He's trolling. He's trolling. The cream rises to the top. You will eventually fall up the ladder.
No, that's not true. I'm close to the top. The cream is rising.
You're taking our picks. Guys like me and Kyle, hardworking guys.
Yeah, I'm combining all your picks and just making them my picks and doing a better job with it.
Okay, so we expect our 12% each if you come through.
Well, it's not going to be that much. Kyle, can you give a quick shout-out of who do you think your lock of this card is, DraftKings-wise, the guy that you have to have on your teams?
Lock of the card. I might be biased, but I'm going to say Mark Diakisi. I love this kid. He's a great prospect. He's good everywhere. Could be a first-round finish. Could be a unanimous decision with 7 takedowns, maybe a couple drops. I love Mark Diakisi.
Cody, who's your guy?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Brett Johns. I know that he's a little more expensive. The probably better value would be Breeze, but the thing with Brett Johns is that I don't see how he gets caught here. The guy is very competent. Even when he's in a bad position, it's guys that are in a bad position that can get out, that make them locks. And I agree, Diakisi's good like that because he could knock you out in the first minute of the fight, but if he doesn't, you know that you can have the confidence in this guy to fight a good 15 minutes and still get the decision. I feel the same way with Brett Johns. If this guy ends up in a bad situation against Ian Entwistle, I have the confidence in Brett Johns that he will survive, that he will get out of the leg lock, that he will avoid the takedown, and that he will keep coming forward. It's hard to have confidence in guys when it comes to MMA, and especially because, in this case, I'm taking on a guy that's just trying to break him a leg. If I can avoid that, Brett Johns will be okay. I think he does avoid that. I know he's a little expensive, but that would be my lock.
Kyle Marley, you can follow him on Twitter at BigMarley3. And, of course, you can follow Cody at CJ Saftic on Twitter. You can follow me at the PME. And remember, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on YouTube under the Fantasy Sports Network tab or on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, Audio Boom, iHeartRadio, and Google Play for all the complete, uncensored audio versions under the Pat Mayo Hour. Good luck this week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.